Now, what was the question?
It wasn't really a question.
Oh, that's right. You were talking about going within.
Yeah.
The reason why I don't necessarily agree with that is because inside of us we have a lot of different types of emotions. And some of our emotions are actually what I would classify as addictions. In other words, they're emotions that are not pure or in harmony with love and truth, but rather they are addictive in their nature. In other words, we're using these emotions to satisfy some unhealed feelings within us that cause us to act unlovingly to other people. Does that make sense? Now, if I go within every single time to determine what the truth is, then sometimes I'm going to go within and I'm going to feel something's the truth when it's actually not, because it's an addiction rather than the truth. Now, I see this happening a lot in New Age circles where people say if it feels bad, then it must be wrong. I don't agree with that statement either, because there are many things that feel good that are actually, from God's perspective, out of harmony with love and truth. And there are many things that we feel are bad currently, that are bad, and yet are actually in harmony with God's love and truth. And it's because of our addictions that we believe they're meant to be out of harmony. So going within isn't always the solution either. Can I tell you what the solution is? And yes, if I find somebody unloving in a group, I'll give them a certain amount of time to address the issue of being unloving, and if they continue to be so, then I ask them to leave. I have had times where I've been tempted to almost call the police in some of our presentations, but that's a different story. Okay, so let's look at how to determine truth. Now, this involves the being that is God. God is your creator. So if you think of that person or being as your creator, that being, according to my current feelings, is male and female. You don't have to accept that. When I say male and female, it has masculine and feminine qualities. That's what I've discovered through this process. However, you don't have to believe that. Although half of us here are males and half of us here are females, it sort of makes sense, would it not? But we'll talk about that later. Here is your soul. I feel you're a half of a soul, so I'll draw you like one half, and that's the other half of you, whoever that is. Now, if it's the male or the female, it's up to you. We together are one complete unit or entity. But you don't have to believe that. You are, at the moment, an individual. Let's call you an individual like that. Okay? How does this individual determine the truths about the universe and the truths about itself? That's the question. Because we want a way, don't we? If we don't have a way to do it, then it's pointless investigating anything, isn't it? And this is what I find fascinating with mankind on the planet. They investigate one area of spiritual investigation. It's got a lot of fascinating things in it. I like this and I like that, but I don't like this and I don't like that. And instead of determining what is actually God's truth in that, we go, I like that, so I'll accept that. I don't like that, so I'm not going to accept that. And then we go, but generally with that particular faith or whatever it is, religion or whatever, on the whole I don't like it much. So then I go and find another one. And I investigate that using the same method. I like that, I don't like that, I like this, I don't like that. And then if the likes and the dislikes, if it's disliked like that, then I'll leave that faith and go on another one. And if you think about your own lives, many of you have done this over and over and over again, where you've investigated one thing after another, after another, after another, finding flaws in things, finding things that didn't marry up, didn't sort of join together, all that stuff. And so in the end, what we start doing is we start accepting what we feel is a basic truth. And it's very much a New Age philosophy, which is everything's got truth. We start saying that to us. Because that prevents us from ever actually having to make a choice about what is truth or not. Because we've become frustrated with that process. Now what I'm suggesting to you is that you don't need to do that. There is another way to determine truth, and this other way has certainty, completely certain, with everything. It's a process where you'll discover truth after truth after truth for the rest of your existence. In other words, you'll always be fascinated, you'll always be enthralled with the discovery process, but you will not ever feel like confusion with regard to what is truth or what isn't once you've made the discovery. So, what is the process? The process is this, and it's a very basic underlying theory that I'm presenting to you that you can actually put into practice in your day-to-day life to discover whether I'm saying to you is true or not. And that is, if there is a God who loves you, then that love should be flowing to you 24/7, as the saying goes. If that God exists and that God loves you, that love, let's call it divine love, shall I? In order to separate it from the love of people, I'm going to call it divine love, meaning love coming from the divine, from God. That divine love should be flowing to you 24/7, if that God exists. Now, if that God doesn't exist, then this whole discussion is pointless. Does that make sense? And I'm perfectly happy to concede that. But if this God does exist, then this love should be flowing into your soul, flowing into your being, into your person, all the time, unless there's a problem with the flow of love. Now, does everyone understand that from that perspective? Very simple understanding, isn't it? Now, what is the thing that would prevent the flow of this love into this soul? And what I'm saying to you is there's only two things that can prevent it. Only two. One is like this big barrier across the top. That actually means that when this love attempts to flow into you, there's a break in it that doesn't allow the love to actually get into you. And that barrier is our inability to accept truth. Or a false belief. So in other words, while I believe the wrong thing, God's love cannot flow into me because I'm holding on to a belief of something that's in opposition to the love itself. And while I'm in opposition to the love itself, God's love cannot flow into me. Surely that makes sense from a intellectual theory perspective, at least. So that's number one. So what I'm saying is that without truth, love cannot flow. I'm even saying that without truth, love cannot flow between individuals. Like if you're with your partner and you've just cheated on your partner and you withhold the information from your partner, love can't flow. That's what I'm saying. When you do or act out of harmony with the love, out of harmony with truth in the relationship, love can't flow. That's what I'm putting forward. That's the first thing, our inability to accept truth. In other words, if we put it in a positive, what I'm saying is that this love will continue to flow as long as I accept truth. Now, straight away, can you see this is very interesting? Because what it's also telling me, if we take the opposite idea, what it's also telling me is that if I don't accept the truth, love cannot flow, and therefore I have a way of determining what is truth. So if the love isn't flowing into me right now, and I can't feel it flowing into me right now, then I've got to be out of harmony with truth in that moment.
But to understand that, we would need to know what that love felt like at least once.
And that's our problem. Most of us have no idea what that love feels like until we put this experiment in place. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so the reality is most people on the planet have never or rarely experienced the flow of God's love into their soul, just for that one reason. They have always been blocked to truth, and so nothing actually flows as a result into them. No love can flow. And because they've never had the experience of love flowing, they then start going down the track of maybe there isn't a God. Maybe there isn't anything like love. Maybe I've got to come up with my own ideas of what God is. Maybe, they worry about all those other things because they're just not feeling the love. Does that make sense? Yep. So I agree, unless you had that very first experience, it's very, very hard. The key is to at least get to the point of having that one experience and then to analyse what happened for you to have that experience. Yeah? I agree.
Yes, could you tell me, for you, how you're differentiating between truth and humility?
Truth is the truth whether I accept it or not. Let me illustrate. This is a blue pen, yes? We both agree? Okay. Why do we both agree?
We can both see it.
We can both see it. It has a colour to it that we all agree is called blue. Yeah. Now, many people will argue, and perhaps the man who was previously in the audience might argue that it's black or something like that, this colour. But those colours are very different from each other, are they not? Yeah. One is truthfully a different colour than the other, is it not? The truth is that one is a different colour than the other. They're not the same. That is a basic truth. I would call that the truth whether you accept it or not. Does that make sense? That is a different colour than the other, and that is a truth that both of us can either deny completely. We can argue that it's not. We can even intellectualise the whole process. Well, this is made of atoms, and this is made, and in the end, it's not really that colour anyway. It's just the way our eyes perceive it. And once I've explained all of that, then it's not blue. And in the end, none of that proves anything because in the end, these two are different colours. That is a basic truth. Now, what I'm saying to you is that basic truths exist in all walks of life. So in other words, basic truths about physical things exist, such as science, physics, and those kind of things. Basic truths exist. But I'm also saying that basic truths exist about your emotional self. And basic truths exist about the universe. And basic truths exist about your spiritual self, about who you really are, that soul. That's what I'm suggesting. I'm not going to tell you what those basic truths are. I'm just suggesting that those truths exist as absolute truth. Does it make sense? That you can discover for yourself. That you do not need anybody else to tell you even if you follow this process. You can discover them, and in the end, you will discover the same things that I have discovered or will discover. Because eventually, if we all discover the absolute truth, we'll eventually end up with the same belief about the truth. So if I can illustrate that, all of the scientists who began investigating the atom started off with different concepts of what it was. However, over the years, what happened? Their concepts converged as they discovered more truth. Do you see that? Let's look at flight. Initially, we had all these different ideas about what flight would be, the laws involving aerodynamics. But over the years, all of those concepts converged into one law even. The law of aerodynamic and lift. The law of aerodynamics is a law that is a truth because we have relied on it over and over again, and everybody, even though they started off with different ideas, because they were the scientists who did this, were open to different truths. And because they were open to different truths, they eventually discovered the one truth they were seeking. Does everyone get that principle? It's the same spiritually, exactly the same spiritually. If we have the same process that those scientists followed, which is they were humble to receive new information. They investigated truth through a process of and investigation through experimentation. And they eventually proved through something happening, an event, that it was true. That's how they discovered it. And I'm saying it's exactly the same with all of the truths of the universe. God has put this whole thing in place that scientists generally understand pretty well, but the majority of us don't apply to the rest of our lives. And that process is this process. That if there is a God of love, that love would be flowing into us 24/7 as long as two conditions were present. The first condition is that I am willing to accept the truth. That's number one condition. Now that truth that I'm willing to accept can be internal or external. In other words, it can be the truth about the universe or the truth about myself. I'm not going to differentiate between those two truths. It has to be, we have to be in harmony with that truth. Does that make sense? The second condition, what do you reckon it is? This soul has to be humble. It has to be willing to experience everything it feels. Because if it's not, there are going to be some feelings coming in that it doesn't like. And if it's not willing to experience them, it's going to stop the process. It's going to harden itself to the acceptance of the truth. Does everyone get that? Yeah? So, if I am humble, I have a passionate desire to feel and experience my own emotion, and I am willing to accept the truth, and I'm willing to see that this love would be flowing into me 24/7 if those two things were constantly with me. And then I sit down and I go, yeah, I've not felt God's love my entire life. I don't have a feeling that I've ever accepted God's love my entire life. Let's say I have that feeling. And that tells me that I'm either not humble or there are a heap of truths that I think are true that are actually false. Just simply those two things. And if I want to, I can find out what they are by a very simple process. And the process would be ask this God to receive the love and then feel about that particular thing. And if that particular thing turns off the flow, I know it's not true. And if that particular thing stays flowing, then I know it's true. If the love keeps flowing, I know it's true. If I'm asking for the love to enter me, and the love keeps flowing, while I think about a particular thing, then that particular thing must also be true. That's what I'm suggesting to you. It's very simple, isn't it? Yeah?